Getting rich, escaping a life of mediocrity, is actually fairly simple. I guarantee if you're finding it hard, you're overcomplicating this entire process. And so for me personally, I finally went from broke era to over 100K per month when I stepped back. I stopped trying to be so smart. I dumbed down the plan. I got out of my own way. And so in the next couple minutes, I will explain a universal 4-step process. And I don't care who you are, where you were born, what business model you use. If you follow this 4-step process, you will guarantee for yourself that you get rich. It's impossible, and you'll see what I mean. But if you can't focus for the next couple minutes to understand it, this making money thing, this getting rich thing, it's just not going to be for you. You've got to give yourself a chance. And so, the first step of this amazing, I haven't even given it a name, but universal 4-step process, if you follow this, it will change your life. Step 1, pick a business model, pick a vehicle. Now let me cook for a second, because ultimately, what's the best business model, you may be asking? Good question. The best business model is the one that you stick to and take relentless action on for the next 3 years, 5 years, whatever it may be. Look, there is no best business model. The best business model is the one you commit to, not the one that some guru is teaching in some 997 course. However, there are some criteria that we can use to establish which is a better business model for us as a person, right? Because every business model works. I know people making millions, drop shipping, AI, agencies, SMMA, trading, you name it, they all work. And so we've got a selection of businesses we can choose from, vehicles that we can choose from. And so you've got to find something that feels like play to you, but looks like work to others. The person who enjoys walking will walk further than the person who wants the destination. And so we all want this destination. The business, especially at the beginner end, is a vehicle used for personal change, financial personal change. And so we all want that, but it's not the goal which separates everyone. Because if you would have, if it's the destination that creates the success, you would have already had it by now. And so we need to pick a vehicle that you actually enjoy the process. Because if you enjoy walking and you enjoy the destination, you become a very powerful weapon. You gain a competitive advantage without having gained any skills whatsoever. But at the very least, you need to pick a business model that you don't hate the process and the work around it. Because if you do, you're already stacking the deck against your favor, against the odds. Business in itself is a very difficult sport. And if you're making it even harder for yourself, you are doomed to fail. And so step 1, pick a business model, commit to it. Congratulations, you just found the most profitable, easiest, fastest, laziest business model of 2025. It is the one you just committed to, because I know for a fact that you're going to commit to this motherfucker and work on it like a madman, which brings us on to step 2. We have said business model. What do we do now? Well, we need to identify the inputs of this business, because business, this weird sort of structure, a business, it's just a system. Inputs, process, outputs, and then feedback. But we can forget about feedback for a second. The outputs of a business at the early stages is simply money in our pocket, right? So the input is whatever actually just grows the business. It's the needle movers, not that complicated. You see, the inputs for an agency may be cold calling, DMs, emails, running ads, for drop shipping, testing products, testing creatives. For content, it would be creating content. But it's simple, but it's so important that you understand what actually what do I need to do with this thing, this system, to get the output? What is the actual first action that I need to take to create this chain reaction? And that is the input. You need to identify the input. It is so important because that becomes the goal. We optimize for the inputs and the outputs will happen as a byproduct. But we're not going to get onto that part in a second. Just identify the inputs. And you need to make sure that you get this right, because it allows you to cut through all of the other noise out there in terms of what do I actually do? You just do the inputs. If you continue to spam this one button, you know that somewhere, the law of accumulation, you are making progress towards whatever it is you want. And so step 2, identify the inputs within your specific business model. Now there could be multiple inputs you can choose from. So I refer you back to that first answer, which is choose something that kind of leans into your competitive advantages, or at least you don't hate it. Moving on to step 3 now. You've got a business model And ideally you pick a niche within that and you've identified the inputs. Now we look at that market that we're in, the specific niche within the business model, and find 3 to maybe up to 10 competitors who are successfully doing what we want to do. Ideally, they're actually doing better than whatever our financial goal is. And so if you want 10K per month, you find someone who's doing 80K per month with whatever you're doing, and you find a couple of them. Now, if you can't find anyone in your niche or your business model actually succeeding at it, you go back to step 1 and you pick a new one, because you need to rewire the way you look at opportunity. Saturation does not mean something is hard. Saturation is an indication of demand. Saturation is an indication of good market health. And so if there is no saturation in whatever you're going after, that means 99 times out of 100, there is no demand. The reason you have no competition is because it doesn't work. I see so many people like DM me and say, well, I've got this AI dog training, AI generative for disabled golden retriever. I'm like, dude, you're trying to make 10K per month and you're trying to reinvent the wheel. Your strategy is not coherent with your outcome. Align it. You're trying to make 10K per month. Stop trying to reinvent the wheel. So you find these competitors. You've got 3 to 5. You're not reinventing the wheel. You're saying, look, these competitors have identified a structure of business, frameworks, strategies, inputs that work. And so I'm going to take the best from competitor B over here, and competitors A, their funnel's really good. I'm going to take that part, and then competitor E over here, wow, that's quite a nice cold DM script. I'm going to take that, copy it, allow yourself to copy. It's it's legal. You're allowed to do it. And it's awesome because they've gone through all the pain and the testing. We can just copy parts of it and put it all together in this amalgamation of the best parts from every single one of the business. Now, obviously we make it uniquely ours. We don't copy paste, but copy generously. Allow yourself to copy. Stop trying to reinvent things. If we can find something that already works, use it. And so once we've copied something, the next stage within step 3 is we copy the different aspects of the business, the processes, the strategies, the frameworks, and we implement it into our business, and then we improve on it in some way. You can improve in 2 ways. You can improve with the quality of the thing. So for a cold DM, for example, improving the quality would be, if you have a templatized DM, you make it personalized. You've improved the quality, the effectiveness of that input. Now, you can also improve in another way, which is probably more realistic as a beginner, which is improving the quantity. So instead of sending 100 DMs a day, you increase that to 200. Now, as a beginner, because you don't have many skills, or you probably don't have many skills, quantity is what we're gonna have to lean on. And so if you can take someone who's already doing something successfully and double the inputs that they are running, you see how it starts to get very difficult to not be successful. If you can look at it from the perspective of what do I have to do to make it very difficult for me not to be successful, well, it's an easier way to approach things. And so if you're doing so much volume that it's unreasonable for you not to succeed your goals, you're in a good place, because volume negates luck. And so that's step 3, copy and improve. That brings us on to step 4, which ties this all together. So just to recap, we have the business model, the vehicle, which leans into what we're good at, our characteristics. We've identified what we actually need to do every single day to grow that business. That is now our goal. We've optimized for the inputs instead of just looking at the output and saying, what do I need to do, getting confused, overcomplicating. Step 3, we've identified people who are already winning, already doing the thing that we want to do, and we're copying parts of it and we're improving it, and we're using stuff that we know works, and we're doing even more of it just to confirm and guarantee that they weren't lucky in some way. We've got to do even more. And so step 4 is simply doing this consistently no matter what. You see, consistency is the glue that will hold everything together. If you have no consistency, you will never get rich. It's as simple as that. Everything you want is just on the other side of consistency. But everybody can be consistent when it's good. When it's feeling good, everything's going well, consistency, it's easy, right? It's when you're in the winter of adversity where consistency becomes a bit more difficult. You see, when every cell in your body is telling you you need to turn around, the doubt, the fear, the pain, the anxiety, you name it, the hard kicks in. That's where consistency becomes pretty difficult, because most people cannot get to the other side of that. Most people don't achieve the goal of getting rich. And that's a good thing, because if most did, you wouldn't want it in the first place. You've got to view hard as a feature, not a bug. You need to be grateful for the hard, because that means you're actually breaking through this illusion of resistance and you're making progress towards the goal. Another frame you can use to help you be consistent, especially when it's getting hard, is using the Stockdale paradox. There was a guy called Stockdale, James Stockdale, a Vietnam prisoner of war, a POW in a Vietnamese camp. Now, he just simply said, the optimists die first. The people who expected the most, the soonest, died first because those expectations were broken. So if you can approach this, optimizing for the inputs, that's the goal, and you expect literally nothing from it. You don't care about the outcome. You literally just do the inputs, and maybe the outcome comes as a byproduct. But if you expect nothing, it doesn't matter after 6 months if nothing happens. As long as you're iterating and as long as you're actually spamming the inputs on a daily basis, you expect nothing. I swear to God, you'll gain everything if you expect nothing. And that's the way you've got to approach it. That allows you to be consistent without getting so emotionally involved and disheartened when things aren't initially going your way, because the whole point of business is you're doing action today to set yourself up in 2 years' time. And so you've got to close that time period, and that's some ways you can do that. And so that's that. Pick the business model, identify the inputs, copy what's already working, and be consistent with it. Relentless. Spam the inputs like a madman, because if you are doing that, you are being the version of you for whom the goal is inevitable. And if you are being the version of you for whom the goal is inevitable, then it will be, because external reality is simply a reflection of an internal cause. If you found this video valuable, there are some adjacent lessons that you can find in a playlist. It's something like called How to Get Rich by Mastering Your Mind, and there's some other similar lessons which you can run through. But apart from that, thanks for watching and Godspeed.